We made it. Patrick looks like he's asleep, but no, I was kidding. How you doing? This
I'm
is
doing
the
great.
Cosmic Mama. Woo, Terry Smith and some blinking internet and Patrick Cimo. All right. It's very good to see you.
Good
Hi,
to see you.
Patrick. Hi, Terry.
Hi. Hi, Patrick.
How you doing, Terry?
Wonderful. And you?
Awesome. I'm doing pretty darn good.
Yeah,
My
We're the
mouth is
lucky
closed
ones.
now.
we are.
Oh shoot, man.
No, I'm saying we're the lucky ones because we're here in Florida. So
Yeah,
Terry,
I mean that's a good point.
Yeah, it's -4 Celsius here where I am.
Ooh, sorry.
No,
so when I go outside and say, "Oh, it's cold today,"
makes
and
us
it's
strong.
67, and I go outside and it's 67, then I really don't get any sympathy from her. So she,
No, I mean I
wow.
get
So
it.
Patrick, mhm. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I get it. I grew up in upstate New York in the mountains, so you know I get the cold. I did that for 40 odd years.
Yeah. Where are you now?
In Florida
Oh,
without the
you're
sun.
in Florida too. Okay.
Yeah, without the snow. No more
Without the
snow.
snow. Okay. Or the ice or the
Or the ice or
cold north wind.
yeah, nothing like that. Nothing
No.
like that.
Cool.
So Patrick, we met maybe a year or so ago in a class with Magical Michelle.
Yep.
And I just thought, oh my God, you're amazing. It's really cool because my channel is Women of the Stars, and we do a lot of work with women, but it was really cool to see men in the classes healing and then actually taking charge. You're the music man at our events, and you've done a lot of study into your Celtic background, right?
Yep. Yep.
How did
Oh,
this all get started for you? Like what led you to Magical Michelle and into the Celtic music and so on?
so it's this huge long journey. And I mean, I suspect we have a little bit of time so I can tell you a little bit.
Terry, can you hear?
Yeah.
Am I too low?
I'll need to access your Audible data to use the app.
How about you, Terry? Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you hearing it, Erica? You hearing us? Yeah. Okay.
Check
Go on.
one, check two.
So tell us you're muted, Erica. Oh. So tell us about your journey.
So it really began when I was very young. It was probably one of those really interesting stories that I never thought would be possible until I look back and I go connecting all these dots. So I was 8 years old. I'm a kid living in this tiny little town called Fort Edward, which is in upstate New York. Milltown, 3,500 people. And, we were kids playing in the backyards during the summertime. And back then they used to do this fun little thing that they called a seance, uh, where you'd lay down on the ground and they'd pick you up with two fingers. And it was a silly kind of fun thing. So I got a chance to be it. And like I said, I'm 8 years old. Um, and I just got my eyes closed because I don't know what they're going to do. And all of a sudden they start this chant, this really funny chant. And my cousin said, "He's dead." And when he said that, I remember I kind of got a little shiver. And all of a sudden, in the blackness of my eyes being closed, I see this hand start reaching through the blackness. So if that means that it's darker than the blackness of my eyes. And I see this hand get towards me, and then I'm really just I can't move. And then this face appears, and it's the face of a dog, but it's a black dog. And I just remember jumping off the table and taking off running down the street. Uh, ran in the house, never came back outside. Years down the road, when I was 14 years old, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And my friend brought me this book in Dungeons and Dragons called Deities and Demigods. And he goes, "Hey, I've got this book for our game today." And he said, "It's really neat to color all the pictures in." So we're starting to look through things, and I get to Egypt. And of course, one of the first gods in the alphabet is Anubis. And as soon as I saw Anubis's face, I was immediately taken back to when I was 8 years old, and I went, I know him. And that was more the spiritual part. The more holistic Patrick really came about when I was 10, and my mother used to get little magazines, Star and Inquirer. I know you probably remember those, the periodicals, and my job was to look through them for snakes and find pictures of snakes, tear it out so that she didn't have to see a picture of a snake because she had this big phobia. So I'm doing my nightly duty of tearing out these pictures, and I see this ad, and the ad spoke about using your voice to cast spells and how you can create things for yourself. And I'm, again, a tiny kid really saying, wow, and it was $1. So I remember I had $1 and I put it in an envelope. The next day went down the street and put it in the mailbox. And about a month later, my mother comes to me and says, "Hey, you got this package. What's this?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." I'd forgotten and open it up. And sure enough, here's this little pouch that has herbs uh, and a little spell attached to it. And my mother snatched that up and, you know, Italian Catholic lady, and that was that. She threw it in the trash. And I snuck down in the middle of the night and took it out and hid it. That was kind of my journey of really becoming one with nature. Uh, I've always been into music as well. So the part Eric was talking about me being the music man. When I was 5, I started playing drums. It was just a thing. I've always had this thing inside of me for music. It's always been there ever since I can remember. And music was always a way for me to express. And I came from a really difficult childhood. My biological dad took off when I was 3, so I don't really know him. Um, Stepdad, or as I like to jokingly refer to him as the evil stepfather, came in a year and a half later until I left when I was a teen. But man, it was still always music as an escape, no matter how harsh it was. Music was always an escape for me. And I knew that if I could listen to Jim Croce, that would soothe me. And if I wanted a more uplifting thing, I might put on, honestly, I might put on something from disco because that was really kind of a big deal back in the 70s. Um, but music always moved me and it always kind of guided my emotions. And I came to meet Michelle, oddly enough, because I was performing at a thing called the Urban Shaman Music Festival, which was held about 2 years ago. And my good friend sent me a message on Facebook, Mecca, Ms. Mechanism,
Yeah.
sent me a message saying, "Hey, I love your music. I watch your face or your YouTube channel with all the music. I love all the Viking stuff. It's really cool. Do you want to play a show?" And I
Wow.
said, "Well, I don't really, it's on a keyboard, like literally all the music I create is on a keyboard into my computer through all the magic of digital audio stuff." And she goes, "Yeah, so do you want to play or not?" And I kind of went, "Yeah, okay." So I broke apart a drum set that I had, created this Viking drum set, and played. So we're prepping for this event, and I wanted to do a sound check, so I brought one of my drums. And that day as well, Michelle was hosting an event there for her shaman training. So she was actually training shamanic uh, students in the forest right next to where I was. And I ran up to her when she pulled up and I said, hey, I'll do my sound check and I won't bother you guys when you go in for your thing. And she kind of smiled. She goes, no, you drum all you want. And she kind of off the cuff was like, it might help. And I was like, oh, okay. So later on, I'm up at the kitchen area because I was doing the cooking for everyone as well. Um, and all of a sudden, I looked down into the forest line where the people had gone for their training. And the only thing I can describe it as is it looked like waves, like what you would see off pavement in the heat, that heat wave kind of thing. And I felt a calling to go down and drum. So I walked down the hill, started playing a little beat that just came to me. And when I felt it was done, I stopped and back up the hill I went, cooking a little bit more, serving people. And a little while later, again, I see this thing in the forest. So I go down and play the drum, and that was that. It was the following week that I saw Michelle, and she said to me, she goes, how did you know to go down there and play when you did? And so I told her what I saw. And basically, someone at the time that I was called was beginning their journeying. And one of the things that we train with some of our shamanic practices is you don't need to use plant medicine necessarily to achieve trance state. You use drumming, rhythms, that repetitive sound. That's the transport. So she told me that I was lifting people that when they came back, that they said that they had like the most amazing experience. And Michelle, as a teacher, said that she had a most amazing experience as well. And I've always been very, very, very meek and humble. And a lot of people that weekend were coming up to me about my music and how it just sounded so profound. It made them feel connected with the earth because my Viking music is very earth tone and it's very guttural. I do throat singing, and it's a very unique experience. But I wasn't ready for all that attention, for people coming to me saying, "Wow, this power, this energy that you're exuding." And my wife was there videotaping and taking pictures, and she was in awe. I mean, we've been together for 25 years, and she had never seen something like that with me. She's known about what I've done in my past. She knows about my spiritual thoughts and ideas, but she had never actually seen it until that point. And I think that just really awestruck her. So the festival ended, and when we got home the next day, Sharon and I were on our patio talking, and she just looked at me and she goes, "You have to follow this. I don't know what it is. You need to follow this. What does it sound like to you?" And I said, "It sounds like a gong." And she just kind of laughed. She goes, "That's what I heard." And I'd already started looking weeks previously on YouTube at gongs. I had no idea why I wanted to look at gongs. Like that was something that I wouldn't even have done. Like that's nothing I would put money into. But all of a sudden, here's this YouTube video, and I showed my wife, and she heard the sound, and she goes, "You have to have that." And we didn't have the money to do it. But then, literally, all of a sudden, with her little tinkering that she does, she goes, "Go ahead and put this number in." And she'd done some kind of little micro loan. I forget what they call it, whatever the PayPal kind of thing. So next thing I know, I get this beautiful gong that's sitting behind me, and it just felt right. From the first moment that I struck that gong and opened that spirit up, I'm actually starting to feel emotional with that. Um, that was a very big impact on my moving forward with my music. Before it was just, hey, I want to do this really awesome Viking music with this really awesome heavy beat. And then all of a sudden I realized this path went soft. And that's when I understood, okay, this is where I am musically. I'm 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 kind of going to that more feminine side, which is absolutely wonderful. I love it. I love exploring some of those soundscapes that I can create. And it's a very ambient, ethereal type sound that you'll hear. Um, those kinds of things I feel just so compelled to write that I literally sit at this desk and Sharon, if she was standing behind me right now, she'd give me that look, and Erica knows the look I'm talking about. Um, she'd give me a look like this is absolutely true. I'm at this desk probably 80% of the time that I'm home. Like, if I can't sleep in the middle of the night, it's, the 3 a.m. call. I come out here and I play music. That's what I do. So that part of getting where I am now, Eric, has just been you know, so many different paths that came and went.
So, so have you looked into the tradition of the gongs? Have you done any research into them? And two questions. And have you worked with any of the Tibetan singing bowls or any of the singing bowls? Because those frequencies are right. They will take you into that trance state.
Yes. So I did research as soon as I pressed buy, and that's one of my natures is research. I'm a consummate researcher. I love to learn, and that's just a huge passion. So I started researching and reading about the history, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Really understanding that this is stuff that was created 4,000 plus years ago. These frequencies, these vibrations have been around since we've known, and even since before then, because obviously it hasn't been written down, but they did this kind of work. And once I started researching and understanding what what was happening with the gong. And I remember the day that I got it and I set it up here in the dining area or the living room, and I just started, you know, playing around the gong and just wanting to hear the different overtones and hearing where this tone might come from or this frequency might start to do like a harmonic, and really just started to find those paths along the gong. And the biggest thing that I learned was the gong being a spirit, the very center of the gong that you see here that's blue, uh, is not to be struck because that's the heart. So you don't ever really strike the heart. You can strike around the heart, obviously, but you never strike dead center. So it's funny now when I look back at YouTube and I watch, like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin, and I see John Bonham stand up and smash this gong behind him, and he's like right dead center. Now I'm like, ew, that kind of hurts. Um, so I did a lot of looking into what the frequencies are about, and that honestly the gong is to imitate the earth, and it's to imitate the cosmic frequency of 8 hertz. that really nice low hertz that is just so grounding. And when you can find and match that, I've literally had people, my wife last week uh, did go on a journey during one of my sound healings that Magical Michelle had with her Egyptian oil anointing that she does. Uh, I usually go in there. She asks me to go in there as a compliment to the vibrations and frequencies of the oil, and having the gong there with also answering the next question. I do have crystal bowls, so I go there with my bowls and chimes and things. And my wife actually journeyed, so I do know that the frequency of the this gong, which is a very interesting one. It doesn't. I can give it some high overtones and harmonics, and Erica has actually seen and felt this. It has this low growl that it can do. It's like this very guttural tone that just emits from it, and it's such an interesting sound. The the first the first few nights that I had it, once I unpacked it in here, and I was finding all the different tones, I actually moved it into the bedroom, right next to the bed. And before we would go to bed, I would play the gong a little bit. And it was a very interesting thing that began to happen with our sleep patterns and being able to just ooze right into your pillow. And man, you just melted after that gong, just and that resonance just kept vibrating and going and going. So it's one of those instruments that you you can never find the ending to it. You know, like a piano might have 88 keys. This doesn't have a key, it just has all these different tones and frequencies. So the frequencies of my bowls, and I do want to soon start collecting the true Tibetan Himalayan bowls because they have such a wonderful, heartfelt, grounding feeling to them when you strike them and when you make them sing and get the harmonics. Um, but to start, because again, I had no idea this was happening. Like all of a sudden, I woke up one day and I've got this beautiful, wonderful spirit that has graced my life, and I'm buying all these interesting instruments that I intrinsically know will heal people. And I think that's one of the parts I had to really get over with my singing bowls was I got these, singing bowls, and I bought them one at a time because really they can be expensive. So I was buying like one here and one there. And after a few months, I had three. And I was like, you know what? This is my this is my journey of delivering this sound healing, and somebody's going to take this journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided the reason I only needed that was then I also had my keyboard and I had my recording studio, and I decided I'm going to create background music so I can always have something there, something to kind of keep that feeling, that energy, that vibration continuing, even with a lull in the gong, even with the frequency of the bowl starting to just fade away. You always have something with the music gently in the background. And I want there to be space between each of the instruments that I play because I don't want it to feel rushed. When I've been to sound healings, I've sometimes heard people that it feels rushed because they're trying to play so many instruments. And now when I go to a sound healing, I'm surrounded by maybe, you know, 10 different things, and I'll maybe use 3,
Mhm.
4, because I'm guided by spirit that night as I heal people, as I do that healing. I'm guided by spirit. There's nothing rehearsed. Um, I don't go in there with a plan of saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this in the key of G." Well, the gong's going to play whatever the gong's going to play, and it's not going to do a song like that. So I just have that guidance. What I will do is have intention, because with sound healing, intention is so vital to the healing. So if I know that I'm going to do something that's to heal the heart chakra, that's a powerful thing that we need to really work on, and I'm sure we'll talk about later with talking about consciousness. But the heart chakra is really our center point of us and our being. So if I want to write something about the heart, I'm going to write it in the key of F sharp, because that's what's gonna resonate. That's the tone. That's the note that's associated with, and then you start building the chords and a progression that kind of goes along with it. And I'll really stretch that out. And most often I'll make a song uh, that'll last an hour. And I do that because I know people like to meditate. And whether they can meditate for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, I want them to be able to have that option. Hey, here's an hour of music that you can start here or in the middle. Doesn't really matter. It's just still going to just kind of follow this little flow. So I'll create that, and then the sound healing then comes from that bed of intention. So that F sharp, uh, setting the foundation for that healing of the heart chakra, that begins that intention setting and lays that foundation and bedding that I can then begin to have spirit call upon me to work the gong. Uh, I do have certain things that I do with the gong. Uh, when I first begin, I'll usually take the smaller friction mallet, which makes that really crazy whale sound, and I'll just lightly tap the gong to kind of start bringing the spirit alive. I don't want to just go right into start gong. Like, I want to bring the spirit in and not just, force it. I want it to just come out. And so when we do this, it just allows the gong to then begin to speak to me. And one of the things you'll notice, even in the picture that you're showing, Erica, um, I drape my arms on the gong while I'm playing so that I can feel the vibration of the gong. So as I'm playing, I'm feeling the gong, getting that feedback, and just really feeling it. And I think probably one of the most interesting things is, and again, this is all new to me. Like, I've not gone to Tibet. I've not gone to India. I've not gone to South Florida to learn, but I have this intuitive part of me that understands music and understands healing, and it just kind of came all together. So I'll play for 25, 30 minutes during the sound healing, sometimes up to an hour depending upon the venue. But as soon as I finish, it's a really interesting thing that happens with my body because of having all these vibrations going through me. I vibrate, like I visibly vibrate. Um, Erica, I think you were at the house when we did the pool, and I had people in the pool and had the gong out there. Were you there for that? Yep, you were. So that was one of those moments that just all of a sudden came about because Michelle said, "Hey, after this class, would you be interested in doing this?" I was like, "You bet." Vibration, water, healing, yes. And as soon as I finished that, and I literally walked straight into the water, because I was just so filled with energy and this vibration that was going on. And a couple of people there were doing some Reiki, and one picked me up by the heels and the other one held me by the shoulders. And as I was lying there, just feeling this weightlessness, um, I don't remember who it was, said, "Wow, you're vibrating. You're like literally shivering. Like, are you cold?" I'm like, "No, I'm not cold. That's my I don't know what this is." And it was my body just becoming one with what I was doing. And I had to get used to that feeling because I had never had anything like that before. And to all of a sudden have this energy hit me. And what I've begun to understand is, and we can really get into this when we talk about consciousness as well, is as a shaman, one of the things that I know is that I'm still and always will be a sick person, uh, with everything that I've gone through in my life and past lives. And the way that I heal myself is through healing others. So to heal myself, I heal other people, right? So that kind of cycle happens. When you perform a sound bath and you have 12, 15 people like we had in the pool that night, it's just me sending this sound and vibration out. It's 15 people absorbing and then sending it back. And I didn't know that's what was going on. As I was healing and sending out these vibrations, that healing was coming back to me 15-fold. That was one of the most profound experiences until just like this past November when I performed a couple sound healings over the weekend uh, down in Kissimmee for a festival. And I had 50 people at the Sunday sound healing session. And this was the Zen Awakenings Festival. I didn't say that. Um, but there were like 50 people on the second day. And my entire being radiated. Like, I drove 3 hours to get down to this place to do one sound healing for 40 minutes and then drive 3 hours back. And the reason I was able to do that was because of how important it is to heal people with the sounds. And then for me to be healed was important. And when I absorbed, the funny part was on the first day, I'm setting up and I'm getting ready. And there were like maybe 5 people who were sitting there listening. And I was like, okay, I'm new to this festival. Not a lot of people know me. I get it. Cool. I'm all right with that. So I start and I uh, bring the gong spirit to life. And as I'm doing that, I feel this call to pick up my heart chakra bowl. And so I let spirit guide me, and I go to the corner and, you know, and intone it 3 times. And then I'm guided to walk around the room. And I went, oh, okay. And when I looked up, the 6 people that were there were now 12. It had doubled in size just from me doing that little bit. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So I kind of made my pass and went back up and kept doing my healing. And I was called again back to a different bowl, and it was for uh, um, third eye chakra. Sorry, I was trying to think of the name. And I remember picking up the bowl because it's kind of a smaller diameter bowl. And I remember picking up the bowl and just keeping my eyes closed and lightly playing it. And when I opened my eyes and looked up, now there's 20 people in front of me. So in a matter of like 6 or 7 minutes, I went from having 6 people to having like 20 people. And by the time I had finished, there were like 33 people. I counted 33 people in the room. And I thought, first of all, that's interesting that it was 33. But then I was just like, wow, that's the most people I've ever done sound healing for. And I was really feeling kind of buzzy. But people started coming up and talking to me. And, I had to like compartmentalize this experience that was happening inside of me so that I could talk with people um, and thank them for their graciousness of thanking me. Um, it was just such an interesting thing. And I remember finally getting all my stuff into my little wagon and walking this little trail to my car. And as I pulled out of the drive and got out to the main road, I had this illuminated feeling like I felt this golden glow in my car, like not just because it was outside, but literally in my car. And it wasn't the voice, it wasn't the burning bush, it wasn't anything like that, but it was certainly a voice in my head. And the voice was very loud and very clear that said, "You are a healer. There is no doubt anymore. You can stop doubting." And I remember stopping my car and just tears streaming out of my eyes. And I don't remember the drive home. It was 10 minutes long for 3 hours. Um, and the next day when I got there to start, there were 20 people. And I initially, before I even began, I thanked them for what they had given to me the day before. Um, and I said those exact words that I just told you. It's just me creating these sound waves, these vibrations. It's just me sending this out. But because of the healing nature and the way that it works, that reflection coming from all of those people amplifying back, I just had to thank them and let them know that the power of one really truly matters. The idea that one person can affect a room of 50 people with a gong. It's a gong. It's not rocket science. It's not the latest fashion. It's not, some kind of pill that you take that has like 8,000 side effects that's why the commercial takes 3 minutes long. So yeah, it's been very interesting getting here, and it's been a great journey with Michelle. Michelle is my mentor in so many different paths, and oddly enough, to a degree, I sometimes feel like her mentor because she hears things from my wisdom just as much as I hear things from hers. And I think that's one of the beauties of hers and my relationship is this total mutual respect of each other and knowing that there's never judgment that happens between us. Um, and I'm so gracious and happy that through Michelle, I was able to meet Erica. Like, Erica is everything that I've ever imagined someone in this spiritual life to be. This bright cherub kind of face with that huge smile, and your hair, the way that you just play and do whatever, because in the end, nothing truly matters. Why does your hair matter? What color it is? I'd love to be able to have white hair and look like an elf. I know that's not in a picture, but I did have that fantasy back when I was in high school and I had a mullet. I would have pulled off an elf look pretty good.
So,
I thank you
Patrick,
for that.
okay.
You can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, because the whole screen's been going in and out, but I thank you for saying that. I think it's like that. That's the best thing about the classes, and what I find is this. I can be so contrary sometimes. I can be like this grumpy little. Why is everybody doing this? Sometimes, and it's like I see her example of allowing people to be themselves, and like you could tell her just about anything and she's like, okay, no big deal, because and she'll volunteer something to make you understand, like, this is my life, this is how real it gets, and I don't judge you for it. And gosh, it really calls me to test my boundaries. But I love what you said about my face, because someone at the store the other day, he said, oh, you got your what's her name? Miss Cleo. Oh, you got your Miss Cleo outfit on today. That's what this man said to me in the store. It's like, call me now.
Oh man.
But Terry, I know you had a question, but I just wanted to make sure I responded while I could.
Well, no, what I was just going back to what Patrick was just talking about with the frequencies, right? You're tapping into that with the gong. I believe that it's a really low gamma frequency, and
Yes.
that's when we think of the Tibetan monks and all that. That's where they go, is into that deep meditative state. So you're really in an altered state of consciousness when you're playing it. So you're really connecting to the universe, and that is what's moving you. It's not, it's like, so you are, yes, you're getting healed because those frequencies, you're just the conduit, right? And it just, you must resonate. Absolutely, you must resonate afterwards, because that gamma frequency is so powerful, even though it's such a low hertz, but it just sits there, right? It sits and sits and sits, and probably even hours afterwards, you're still feeling that resonance, right? So how has it, since getting your gong, of course, we know that it has its own spirit, right?
Yeah.
And now that it's part of you and you're part of it, how has it changed you've talked about your music has changed, but have you noticed any other changes within your proximity? Has it changed your connection with people? I mean, you're obviously your relationship with your wife and Michelle and the people you're with, but how about the people around you? Has it changed because of that?
So I would say what's changed, and what I've really noticed um, is with work. So I have a typical 9 to 5 job, and everyone has known me ever since they've known me, that, oh, Patrick's pagan, he follows a pagan path, he's okay, still talks Merry Christmas. I'm not one of those, I would never disrespect somebody like that. But they've always known that. They've always known that I'm pagan and I have a different outlook and belief system. But what I've done lately is, in the past several years, is that I have slowly begun to bring outside me to inside work me, because I can't not heal people at work. Like, I can't not help. That's just not my nature. So what I've noticed, Terry, is this concerted effort recently, like within the previous year, I would say more so this past year of 2023, was an actual, I'm expressing this, and I'm okay giving these thoughts and feelings in a what can be a sometimes hostile environment of working. And I work in aviation training. It can be a very, and when I say hostile, I don't mean like this, I just mean like chaos. It's a lot of people just can't take something like that, and it's takes a takes a good constitution. So you have to know how to kind of filter things. So being able to then show that part of myself to people. And then I started to speak. And once I began to speak to people, and these are people who've known me almost 10 years already, all of a sudden, they're not just listening, they're hearing what I'm saying. And they're understanding it, and it's making sense. And when I say, have you gone out and touched the tree today? They know what I mean. Like, it's not a secret. Like, I'm not kidding. Walk out the door, touch the freaking tree. Like, get out of this office. You have to do that. I've just noticed that part of me spilling into work. I know that there's a line, and I will 100% never cross that line. But I think we do ourselves a disservice when we have a pure work persona, because that's not fair to you. And when I say you, I'm talking all of you. That's not fair to you. And truly, it's not even fair to the people who you're coworkers with. Like, they don't get to know who you are, because we have to create this workplace persona. The Patrick who's the funny guy, or the Patrick who likes to gamble. I don't like to gamble. I was trying to think of something like polar opposite. um, you know, People have that persona that they go to work with, and I'm slowly trying to shatter that for me. Like, I'm trying to get rid of what people think makes me up. I'm trying to get them to rethink who Patrick is, unlearn what you've learned about me, and then learn again. And you'll see that who you knew was a true person now, with this kind of transformation over these past several years, it's a totally different facet. And it's funny when I look back on this, and I say, man, I just turned, and I'm so happy that I can say I'm still young. I just turned 56. So to me, looking back and saying, I've been following this path for almost 50 years. And it's taken me on so many different side quests. When I was 15, I started learning formal meditation through Tai Chi. Talk about setting me up perfectly for what I was going to learn in my early adulthood. And then starting to learn in the 90s, a silly story about Reiki it's 1994, and I'm in business management, so that's what I've done most of my adult career. So I managed these 3 chiropractic clinics, and Doc was a really cool dude. I really liked him. So at the time, I'm maybe 27, 28 years old, and I get introduced to Reiki in the chiropractor office, and I'm totally blown away, because I'm like, I've always felt this ability of healing and having power. I've always felt that, but I didn't know that they actually had a practice. So, it's 1996, 97, and I did what all of us did back then. I didn't get online to Google it. I went to B. Dalton Bookstore, and I went into uh, the New Age section, which back then wasn't that large. And I remember finding where the alphabet started. I'm looking through and I get to the R, and I'm like, Reiki, Reiki. Oh man, there's nothing. What the heck? How am I going to learn about this Reiki thing? And disappointed, I kind of stepped back. And as I stepped back, my eyes looked down, and on this little display case, because I'm in the R section, is a book of runes. And it came with the bag of runes. And I felt and heard it call to me. So when the runes called to me that day, it pulled me away from that Reiki path because, don't forget, as we experience our life, there's so many paths, and there's probably, that Patrick who did take the Reiki path back then, who's doing this really awesome, amazing work, you know, but the path that I'm on right now is the one that initially was called to the runes. And it was an interesting uh, thing because I had always felt a calling to the Norse gods. When I first started researching paganism back in, it was probably 1980, um, I remember looking at all the different pantheons that were out there. And I remember thinking, the Norse gods appeal to me because they seem that they're more of a human figure, right? They walked among mortals, and that appealed to me. That also appealed to me because of, I'm from upstate New York in the mountains with trees and snow, and that similarity of culture, and at least the look and the appeal of it. I think it was a really interesting thing that, this time that we're in now, things that we looked at. By the way, the reason I couldn't find Reiki, the book on Reiki, again, don't forget there was no Google. I was looking in R-A, R-A-K instead of R-E. So, but that's what we did, man. I mean, that's what we learned. But what I look at as I look at those two different paths of, I chose the runic path and started to really learn about who who is Patrick, and I all of a sudden started having visions, and these visions were of mountains and of big cliffs and open sea, and I didn't know what it was back then. And again, it's funny as we progress through our lives, and if we're lucky enough to have that switch turn on, that we can look back and go, oh, and you can start putting the pieces together. It's so interesting to see all this guidance. Like it's as if this path wasn't created for me, but it's this path that I was meant to follow. So again, I'm sure with all the different multiverse Patricks that there are, the one that you're experiencing right now with me is on this really cool path of finding out this history that he never knew. So I didn't realize that all these connections would come up in my DNA. And it was because it was the 2019. This is another fun story. In 2019, for Father's Day, Sharon gave me a DNA kit from 23andMe.
Oh, wow.
And the reason is I had been going through a whole lot of stuff because I had been diagnosed with kidney cancer. And I couldn't move. I was dead tired. I was in a lot of pain at first, and then that turned off. But what I can say is understanding what Reiki can do and understanding what healing energy can do. When I got that kit and sent it in, and I found out, yep, the biological father, who, again, never knew anything about him, was Scottish. But most importantly, Scottish in the Northern Isles, which were from the Netherlands. So I'm a Scot Viking from the Northern Islands. That's where my paternal lineage comes from. My maternal lineage is Calabria, Italy, right down near the tip of the boot. So knowing that all these different lives that came to create me brought me this energy that I now understand as Reiki energy. And I was doing it in a runic sense when I first began, because I didn't use the runes just as an oracle, which is their intent. Their intent is as an oracle. I literally started using the runes as a spell casting because at heart, I'm a witch. That's what I've always identified with, was an energy witch. But again, back then I didn't know what was happening. I was just following this intuitive stuff. So I would use these runes as spell casting, not as an oracle. Looking at it now, I can see where those little seeds from 8 years old, seeing Anubis, to having these visions of these cliffs. Seeing myself, once I fell into a trance state at a Christmas concert where the orchestra began playing a song from the Middle Ages, and literally I was in a trance. And I saw a man on horseback in armor walking slowly towards me. That was the entire song. And the song is like probably 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long. But it was my entire time out, this horse walking to me. And as this person got to me and put the visor up, it was me. And I didn't understand, but I do now, that was me. It was just my DNA. Hearing that song sound healing, that song that was written back in that time period, that one of my ancestors, one of those little strands of DNA turned on to that frequency, because that frequency vibrates, which is all we do anyway. Those two met that night during that concert. I was 17 years old. That I get it now. I was scared to death back then. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was like, man, this is kind of freaky.
So when did you get comfortable with that? Because I think a lot of people aren't comfortable. If you say pagan or if you say witch, like, to me, if you use your energy to create, or if you go directly through source to create, then to me, like, if you do any kind of candle work, if you're doing anything what someone might consider magic, I guess now that's considered, it's got an ugly term now of being a witch, but it's like, to me, what you're doing is facing your ancestry and understanding that you have power, you have energy. Like, I think people today would have called Jesus a wizard, a warlock, or a
Mhm.
witch.
Sure.
And people might get offended if I say that, right? Like in a Christian circle, but a person that laid their hands on somebody and did magic, or
That's
Moses, if he threw his cane down and it turns into a snake, or if you can tap a rock and make water come out, to me that's wizard, witch, whatever. But even the term pagan is, I guess I was even reading in the Bible, and he said, worship no gods above me. But it wasn't like the people back then worshiped only God. They really didn't. They worshiped other gods, but we know that there's the creator who we're the most grateful for. But when did you become comfortable with even using those words of, because I guess
so
it just has this, it's a bad word now because they burn them and they, they
yeah,
string them
yeah.
up and, you know.
It's so I used to I used to not call myself anything at
Right.
all. It was maybe when I was about mid 20s, mid 20s when I started to feel that I could change things. I could literally alter things. Um, and I'm talking about life circumstances that shouldn't have happened, but I was able to kind of alter that course through meditation, spell work. So I didn't know what to call it. The word I used came from Dungeons and Dragons. I called it conjuring. And I also use that term because it was also very fitting that as a senior in high school, um, I was picked to play one of the lead roles in a play that we put on called Dark of the Moon. And I'm telling you, so I'm graduating in 86, so this is 1985. The story is about a witch coven that lives in the Smoky Mountains, right? So it's all backwoods witches, and they live up in these mountains, and the humans down in the valley, they don't really want to associate with. Well, this witch boy goes down and falls in love with the girl, gets pregnant. This is a high school play, man.
I'm like, who picked this play for
The
high
best,
school?
the best drama teacher ever picked this play because
Oh,
the role that I played was the leader of this coven of witches, and his name is Conjure Man. And I remember as I prepped for that role, I really felt like I was this conjurer, this man who lived in the mountains, and in it's Tennessee, and I've got this gruff look, and I came up with a voice. I'm a senior in high school, man, and I'm like going all in with this role.
America is crazy.
It was just so silly, man. And like the voice I came up with was like a cross of Mr. T and I forget who else, but it was like this whole thing that came out. It was like so funny.
I can't help but say this. I was talking to someone this morning about, okay, when we watch the Smurfs, Papa Smurf is a wizard, Gargamel is a wizard. The Ewoks are, they do magic. Like, we grow up in this place that says that all this stuff is bad, but all they do is show it all day on TV. And now Disney has so many shows
Oh,
with like witches and wizards and stuff. It's kind of funny how it's they're saying one thing but doing completely the opposite. It's really
yeah.
strange. But
What
But
yeah,
what
like
it's just funny because it's not it's magic, but really it's just advanced physics, right? It's a
Right.
we're working with frequencies. That's really what it is. And so you're magical when you work with your music because you're working with frequencies. And we know that that's what the universe is made of. And it's just, how do you play with those frequencies? But it's a physics. It's quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
Just because we don't know it by that term, then we create a term, and then it becomes, magical.
Woo woo.
Whatever.
It's
Yeah.
the woo woo.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like the olfactory frequencies, right? When we use the oils, it triggers what? A response in the brain that carries out in the body.
Yep.
And it, but then, we're also told, oh, crystals, crystals have literal vibration and power and energy. And so
Yep.
it all just becomes packaged into, you're not waiting on God. You got to lay there and wait for God to give it to you, and you can't do anything about your circumstances and your situations. You can't conjure anything in your life, right? I
Right.
mean, I think there's different levels when people are going out to try to harm someone else or take something that doesn't belong to them, and then there's this whole different level. But this basic thing of a way of life, a way of healing, a way of nurturing, a way of trying to connect with the earth and be at one.
Mhm.
It's all been, how do you say, put into one big category and swept out the door. Two, like you say, get back to the little white pills that give you the side effects,
Yep.
and to go outside for healing rather than the healings that nature has provided for you.
I think it's important, and it's I never truly understood until obviously now, but as a kid growing up, I was always barefoot. I still am. I'm always barefoot. I only put shoes on to go to work or to go to the store. The little neighborhood that I live in, um, pre-COVID, we used to have parties all the time. Like some neighbor in the neighborhood would have a party, and you'd hear them, and you just start walking until you found the yard. And I'd walk in the middle of summer barefoot. And everybody's like, "Are you crazy? Your feet?" And I'm like, "I've been doing this since I was a child. Like, I used to walk a mile down the street to get to the public swimming pool in my town. And I did that always. That grounding, that feeling of being able to connect with the earth and to discharge, any kind of negative ions and all that stuff that's going on in our bodies. You really don't know what it's like until you just open yourself to the possibility and step on the grass. Open yourself up and just step on the grass. And it's so interesting that my wife, um, who also loves Erica, she loves you. Um, um, when we first met, when Erica and I first met, Sharon was not into it. And I'm not saying that she wasn't giving me space or anti.
Supportive, yeah,
Yeah,
supportive, definitely.
she was supportive. She just wasn't into it because she's a scientist. She is a biochemist by trade. She's a teacher. So she's been teaching biology and chemistry for almost 30 years. So that is her background. That is her life. And it's funny that you made the comment about the crystals because right about the time that we met Erica, um, Michelle had gotten back from Egypt
Oh, yeah.
and had given us all little crystals and things. And one of the things she gave to me was from Egypt. And I remember sitting out on the patio, and that night when I got home, I was feeling it. I was like, wow, this just has a wonderful feel to it. And Sharon just looked at me and she goes, "What do you mean?" She goes, "It's a rock." And I was like, uh, yeah. what else? And she goes, what do you mean? You can't feel it move. I'm like, I can sense it moving. And she goes, I don't know if I can go that far. And I went, okay, fair enough. You're a scientist. How does a watch work? And when I told her about a quartz crystal watch, and I said, why do they have a quartz in it then? And she goes, well, because it vibrates. And I just looked at her and went, yeah. The best part was something switched on with her. And ever since then, she's just gotten more and more and more into it, and just totally amazing transformation. Like, we've been together for 25 years. And in 1 year, she's grown probably as much as I did in 10. Like, it's just been because she's had me helping, and she's had Michelle and Erica and everybody else around, like, helping to feed her, where I didn't have that.
For my part, I just force hugs on people. Like, is it okay if I touch you?
Yeah.
So, and I could definitely see, because now she's more in attendance of different things, and we've done like painting together now, and
Yeah.
it is a different feel. Even though I felt welcome that day at the pool,
Yeah.
now it's like she's one of the girls.
100%. She is all in.
Yeah.
I think what's important was when I recognized that she was practicing alone. When I recognized that, that's when I knew that she had found her space. And that was pivotal. Like, I saw her do that, and I just remember my heart opened. Like, man, you see somebody grow, and it's just an amazing feeling when somebody gets that upgrade. You know, when somebody gets that upgrade that they didn't even know was possible. Like, Sharon had no idea that she could tap into her own inner wisdom of her body, and then using uh, cannabis, using plant medicine, was able to get off 15 years of using anti-anxiety medication
Wow.
that she couldn't function with, like, or without. She couldn't function without it. If she went a day without her medication, there was like a huge curve. And to see her now, where she takes her hit in the morning, takes her hit at night, totally different person. And I'm sure that connecting with the plant medicine has also allowed herself to start letting that guard down. And, that's that shadow work that we all have to do. We all have to be willing at some point to just be honest with ourselves, and to let that guard down, to lose literally DNA memories and trauma. You have to acknowledge that and let it go. And that's true shadow work. Like, I don't know if a lot of people are into really reading about all the things going on with DNA and epigenetics. You know, epigenetics is now confirming what we've been talking about for so many years. And it's like, you want to just knock on the scientist's head and go, yeah, we've been telling you this. Um, Getting to that part, though, getting to that shadow aspect, first of all, isn't for the faint at heart. I think anyone who does shadow work is the most courageous that they will ever be when they begin that shadow work. I find it that important. It is that important for us to all go within ourselves, to be honest and open, to strip down every single pretend thing that we tell ourselves we are, and then to acknowledge some of the ugliness that has happened, some of the ugliness that we've seen, some of the ugliness maybe that we've done. But once you get that and you acknowledge it, that's when you can let it go. That's the most important part about shadow work, is understanding shadow work. Shadow work, first of all, people, when I first started talking about shadow work, like I had people come up to me and say, look, I know you're a witch, but keep that crap home. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're thinking I'm talking that I'm going to be doing like black magic spells or some kind of craziness. And I'm like, oh man, you guys have a lot to learn. And
But I like that you said the pretend part, because I think the term, like people have thrown around the words fake it till you make it. They've taken it completely out of context. Acting as if is to welcome something new into your life, not pretending to be a whole person that you're, when you can't pretend to be cheddar when you're Swiss cheese. This is like this whole act as if and fake it till you make it, and people are just, they're not even till you make it, it's just faking it. And so
yeah,
they're pretending to be happy, they're pretending to be content in relationships with jobs, but they're not making it, they're not working on the thing that they want it to be. They're just, what do you call, suffocating a part of themselves and trying to act as if this life that they're living is fulfilling when it's not, and really you're like suffocating yourself. And then also too, you're trying to bypass spiritual bypassing with not dealing with your emotions when you're really angry or really hurt or really upset, and you're stuffing them down. And so I know that that's where you're going with that, right? Is now you got to deal with this mess that's been left behind,
yeah,
that the hurt inner child now becomes the shadow.
it's a it's a tough thing. And I think one of the most poignant things about shadow work is you can't get someone to do it. Like it's impossible. Somebody needs to want to do the shadow work. It'll never work if somebody's told to do it. You you have to be willing to look at yourself and to acknowledge things about yourself that are kind of unpleasant, whether they're memories, whether they're things or something that you may have done. But what I'd like everybody to know is whatever you get out of shadow work, you have to always remember to not sit in judgment of yourself. All right? We have so much of that crap coming at us from everywhere else in this social media driven world. Like we don't need that. We need we need people who are willing and desirable to take care of themselves and to heal themselves. I think if I was to really tell you how hard shadow work is, um, some people would just turn around and run. I've collapsed in tears from doing shadow work, but I've also jumped in joy after doing shadow work, and I'm literally picturing it right now. Last year in May, my uncle passed away, and I had sworn to never go back to New York State ever again. Really bad old memories, really, really dark shadow. I mean, the darkest you could ever imagine. But it was my uncle, and he was someone who had an enormous impact on my life. And I just knew that you have to go. And I got there in the middle of the night, about 11 o'clock at night. The drive up to the hotel, probably about midnight. And I woke up at 6 a.m. And as soon as I woke up at 6 a.m., I went out to my rental car and I began to drive to all the places that hurt me. I went back to my childhood house. Erica, if you ever get on Facebook, I actually put a picture of the house. The day that I was doing this shadow work, I felt it was important to be open and let people know what I was doing with the shadow work. And when I went to the last stop and just let it all kind of go, I was just filled that I'm feeling right now again of this beautiful buzz, just tingly feeling through my entire body as the energy is positive, and it knows that it wasn't the place. See, I said I'll never go back to New York because I blamed the place, and I went back and forgave the spaces. And when I did that and was able to face those things and let it go, I was able to let that last bit of shadow from all those horrible things just kind of go away. And that was one of the most, I can't say it's the most, one of the most difficult shadow sessions that I've ever done with myself. So it's tough. It can be a scary thing. But when you do it right, the biggest thing that you're going to get out of it is the understanding of what our ego is about. Our ego drives so much. And when you can kind of recognize certain things that are maybe shadow aspects of yourself, and so let's talk about that real quick, just real quick. A lot of times when we talk about persona, right? We were talking about that earlier with work. You have that work persona. Quite often, a lot of us have a persona for a person. So different people will get a different persona. These are all created through ego, which is there to protect us. I do not want anyone to think that ego is bad. I want you to know that it will limit you. It'll restrict you really, really big time. But a lot of our shadow comes from that ego trying to protect us, and it did the best it could, right? And that's why we don't sit in judgment of ourselves, because at the time you did the best you could. That's what our human experience is about, is going through those lessons and then learning so that you go, oh, don't touch the stove. Like, we have to have those experiences. The shadow work of being able to drop your ego out of the way enough that you can really access that hurt and that trauma. And there's stuff in you that you don't even know. And I want you to also remember that trauma And shadow doesn't necessarily have to be historical, like decades ago. Trauma could have happened to you last week. It's still important for you to be able to deal with that in the same fashion, in the same manner. You just need to go in and process that. And if you've never had someone guide you into shadow, um, definitely an experience. When someone can help you get to that point, that can be very profound. We did it a little bit with our shamanic training. Uh, we did it some even, I know Erica, it might not really have been what you think of in that sense, but when we were doing the Digging Deeper series and theta healing, that's really, we're trying to dig deeper, which is getting into that shadow stuff. We're trying to dig it out. And, when you found that question, because they will literally exhibit emotion when you ask that question. That's why they call it digging deeper. It's we're
Right.
trying to get down to that base emotion. Where did that come from? Because you think it came from that way over there, but it didn't, man. It was like something like right here that you weren't even aware of. Didn't even know it happened. Your mom telling you, don't climb the tree, you'll fall. And now you wonder why every time you walk down a set of stairs, you are nervous for some strange reason. Those shadows have been programmed oftentimes into us. I still sometimes think when I bite into an apple that I can taste a razor blade. That's how impactful it was as a child hearing these scare things. Shadow happens. We didn't even ask for that. I didn't ask for my fear of snakes from my mother, but I got it. I'm still trying to deal with it. I'm getting a little bit better, but there are things that are programmed into each of us at such a young age that you're unaware of where it came from. So shadow work, when you can recognize where something came from and you can visit that in shadow, work on that and get through it and release it, you will totally just experience such a growth. Like when you let that go, your growth is just exponential. You thought that you felt what it's like to grow until you really go into one of those base parts of your shadow, deal with it, confront it, and then let it go. Like, man, that's some of the best growth you'll ever have. One of the things that I like to do, I do kind of a somatic breathing shadow work. And basically what I do is I start off with a guided meditation for the class. And this was done in a class setting, so I had a few people there to go through this exercise. So they go through a guided meditation. And the guided meditation brings them to their shadow. And what it does is it asks them to look out over this lake that I brought them to that represents their shadow, because I always thought that mirror, that look of a mirrored lake, always made me feel like that's the shadow, is what's beneath that surface. So I bring them to a lake that is in the embodiment of their shadow, and I tell them that they're allowed to ask one question and to get the answer. What's troubling you? What is it? Whatever it is. And once they find the specific thing, they write it down on a piece of paper in front of them. So that's vital. They write down exactly what shadow came up in their head. They write it down because the act of writing it down, you just made it real. It's no longer just a thought that's in your head that just whirls around with a little monkey brain and, makes you do stupid stuff sometimes. You write that down, and as soon as you write it down, you just get taking it out and put it on paper. Well, we're halfway done. Now I need to let that go. And the way that we let that go is through a breathing exercise. And with the breathing exercise, I wrote a piece of music that for this 15-minute somatic breathing exercise, that people through their breath can begin to let this stuff go. Circular breathing is such a great way of really getting in touch with yourself because you're forced to never pause. And you can go as fast or as slow as you want. That's the best part. Depends upon what you want to feel. Do you want to bring that up? Then you're going to breathe in and out a little bit faster. And I encourage folks that as they're going through this exercise. And I can place a hand on their shoulder. You place a hand on someone's shoulder as they're going through this breathing exercise, and it kind of helps bring them to that feeling of not being alone. There's somebody here watching over me. I'm okay. I can get here. That little bit of encouragement. I put my hand on somebody's forehead, right at the third eye spot, and it was almost as if like this electrical charge kind of hit, because it was like that activated, and they were really then able to push through. And there's, some people are going to really cry because this stuff is so hurtful, and it's been there for decades sometimes. When you're willing to go to that space, then you are 100% going to heal. Nothing can stop you. If you're willing to go to that space, then nothing can stand in your way. And that's one of the most important things about some of the techniques that I teach people is when you come to one of my classes and I teach you a technique, like that's it. I just taught you how to do this thing. You can now go and do it yourself. You don't need me to do it. You can do this for yourself. Every single person has this ability to do it for themselves, which is why I just teach it. I don't run healings. Like, I didn't take theta healing to do theta healing sessions, if that makes sense. I took theta healing to learn another modality in which that I could connect all of the other stuff that I do. And in doing so, it was like literally the first day of theta healing class. So if anybody's ever thought about doing theta healing and you're kind of on the fence over it, let me just tell you how awesome it is. After the first day, the next morning before the class, I had a phone Reiki session with my sister-in-law who lives up in Rochester, New York. So I'm down here in Orlando. So I'm going to do a Reiki session for my sister-in-law over the phone. Because of theta healing, I was able to go to this place inside of myself, displace space and time, and my sister-in-law was on the bed in front of me, and I was at her bed beside her. Like, that is what I saw. She was in my room. I could see her, and I could also see myself in her room doing this Reiki session. And she's been into Reiki and self-proclaimed crunchy granola gal for like 40 years. So she loved that I was going to do this and work with her. And when I finished, um, we both were like, what just happened? Like, we felt such a connection. And she said at the end, I did a grounding because it was, and this was a theta thing that I had just done the day before, where I could feel my hands on her ankles to help ground her. And she felt that. I didn't tell her I was doing it. That's the nutty part. Like, I didn't tell her I was doing it. I just did it. And as I was working the Reiki universal light, I was just seeing that image of helping ground her. And when we finished and she said, what did you do with the grounding at the end? I felt like my feet were being just heavy and pushed into the earth. And I was like, whoa, come on, don't tell me that. And she's like, yeah. And so I told her what I had seen and what I had done. And she just, we were both beside ourselves, like, holy crap, that just happened.
It's pretty great. I mean, I've heard people tell me they can feel the raindrops and certain things, and it's it's always showing you more an intense way to connect with a person. Because even my sister can like see the same thing that I see and stuff like that, and it's interesting. But I'm really loving the fact that it's I think a lot of people gain modalities and it's more about like, okay, I took the class and now I'm just gonna go start a business and I'm gonna make some money, like
I want to
I
hang
I
up with her.
noticed that for most of the students of the class, it's more it's really big on self-discovery. And I think that's a thing that we need is healers that are healing themselves at the same time, not just taking classes and going out and putting your hands on people, but things that are helping you heal yourself and understand yourself before you go really doing so much with other people. And that's kind of that's exactly what I like about it, because in the classes we're actually like, let's put the mirror on you and
Yes.
do that. Yeah.
What I found important for me, um, I rarely, um, I rarely lay hands with people. I rarely do the energy work that I do, like that I'm capable of. I've done sound healings, and the reason is kind of like what you said, Erica. I don't want, so my company, um, Empowered Energies, my little tagline is helping people heal in their own way.
Mm.
Okay, because like I said about shadow work, you can't get somebody to do it. Like, I want to help people find their way of healing because that's how I heal. And I'm trying to create my own version of being an energy witch, being a healer. And when I proclaimed on Facebook last year, um, I am a healer, when I said that into the world and I spoke that I am, so many things opened up and I just started getting requests all over the place from people. It was amazing that that ability to like lay hands on people I have. I just don't know if I'm ready to present that because to me it's done in a certain way. I've laid hands on myself. I cured myself of cancer in 2019. I was diagnosed in April. Um, I was at the emergency room by myself when the doctor came in and said renal cell carcinoma. And I looked at him, I went, kidney cancer? And he goes, oh, you know what that means? It's like, well, not a rocket scientist, but you don't have to be brilliant, I don't think, to hear those words. And I had a choice when I walked out of that ER, the Oviedo ER. And the choice was this: I could either fall on the ground and be a blubbering mess, oh, woe is me, or I could do what I did, which in my belief system, I can look my God in the eye. And I did. And I looked to the heavens, and pardon me for saying it this way, but I'll just tell you exactly what I said. I said, I don't have time for this shit. You need to figure this out. And I was bedridden for 3 months. The second week that I was in bed, I decided to do an online Reiki training program. Now, I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of people that are against online trainings and things like that, and I'm proof that it works. And of course, it has to be a good person, right? It can't just be anybody out looking to make a buck. But finding a good teacher you can find online, and I found one. And in that first week, I learned how to practice. And I was encouraged to practice on myself. And she didn't know I had cancer. She didn't know I had anything. She didn't know anything about me. It was an internet presence that she was a teacher and I was a student. That was it. But in this practice, every night, I would work an energy ball. So way back prior to Reiki, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was studying Qigong, where you kind of create an energy ball of Qi. Basically just universal light, man. That's all this is. And you can actually feel that energy when you put your hands like in a ball shape. You can feel that energy, and it can be as big or as small as you want. But I would practice with this energy ball, and I would sink it into my abdomen, and I would see it healing my kidneys. And I did this every night for about a month. And in June, I had a follow-up. They had to do a scan and had a follow-up, and went to the specialist, and Sharon was there with me on this visit. And as soon as the guy walked in, he walked over to her, not even to me. Walked over to her and he goes, no cancer. There's no cancer. And then he looked at me and he goes, did you hear me? And I said, yeah, it sounds like you said I don't have cancer. And I was like, well, what was it? And he goes, I don't know. Like, he tried to come up with this hypothesis that it was a cyst that burst. But on the films that I still have and the radiologist notes, this mass was jagged and a cyst is smooth. And so that's what kind of convinced this radiologist that it was cancer. It was because of this jagged, angry appearance to the mass. And he said if it was a cyst, it would have been smooth. So I feel that Reiki training, I was able to heal myself. Now, taking it a lot further was once I began theta training and learning theta healing with Michelle, was when I realized that I not only healed myself, but I went back in time and healed our son. When our son was born, they thought he had heart failure. He was taken from us only 12 hours after he was born and brought 30 miles away to a neonatal intensive care unit. I said we were from a small town, I meant it. Like they didn't have anything like that where we were. So Sharon had a C-section, so she was at the hospital. She couldn't leave. And I had to go to the hospital. So I'm at the hospital and, just looking at my little baby who, give him a chance. He just got here. And on the drive home is when the bargaining begins. Take me. I've lived my life. Let him live. That kind of bargaining began as a young father, just wanting his son to be okay. And when I got home, I took a shower. And while I was in the shower, my voice, and it was my voice, boomed in and said the word faith. And at the time, I had no idea what it meant. Well, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, worried about our son down in the hospital, and we were told that we could call 24/7. Neonatal intensive care, they don't have any time constraints. So I called. And when I called, the woman said, well, I just sent him for x-rays, but he's doing okay. And I went, well, if you say he's doing okay, why'd you send him for x-rays? And she said, well, because I needed to confirm the x-rays that he had just gotten. And I said, wait, what do you mean? And she said, well, he just went to get x-rays, and when the films came back, his entire chest cavity is now clear. You can see the lungs, you can see everything. Whereas before, his entire body cavity was filled and cloudy. You couldn't see anything. And she said, I don't know what happened. And I just remember saying, I do. And I know now that in a class with Michelle, we did a healing session where we were able to go back and heal a child in the womb. And I did that exercise. And I now understand that why it was my voice that I heard that said, have faith. That could come out as egotistical. That could come out as a God complex. And I'm here to tell you, the only reason to tell that story is to tell you that there are no limits in this life. There is no limit on you. There is no limit on me. There's no limit on anything. You can think it and create it. When you use the words I am, you can create everything about yourself. When you begin to start seeing all the patterns and all the connectedness, and you can look at the fact that we are all connected. The basic thought and ideal of shamanism is animism. And animism teaches that all living things have spirit. All living things are alive. And we should honor and respect that. So, knowing that energy can't be created or destroyed, that is a law of thermodynamics. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transmuted or transformed or changed. It can't be destroyed. It can't be created. So knowing that, you have been in existence forever. Every part of you has been in existence forever. and you bring with you all of those past memories and all of those lives, but you also bring that connectedness because we were all one. When we can understand that my wife and I, and anyone who has a close person in their lives, will begin to understand that you start thinking their thoughts, you start speaking their words, and they do the same thing. That's sharing cosmic energy. That's sharing the collective consciousness. That's really what that is. So when I speak about doing a sound healing for 50 people and that power of one reaches out into a group of 50 and all of a sudden it creates, I can just picture it almost like a leaf with all the little branches going off and coming back to me. Like that healing branches out and we're all then connected. So knowing that as you go throughout your day, the people that you are near, whether they're relatives, lover, whatever, it's important to always be aware of your energy. You might not even know you're giving it off. You might come home from work and you brought that home with you and you don't even know it. So what you want to do to make sure that you don't bring that home is get into a little routine of taking work off when you get home. I do this every single day. As soon as I walk through the door, my shoes come off. From the door, I step over to the bar area where I take my wallet out, and if I have something else in my pocket, I put it up on the bar stand. Go into my bedroom, disrobe, and I put on whatever I want. I leave it immediately. I'm so strict about it because where I work, there's 120 odd people, and it's um, aviation industry for training. So people want to know who you are. So I have a name tag. And it's very important that that name tag stays at work. That name tag does not come home. That name tag is not allowed in this house because that's work. And I really don't want to bring that energy home sometimes because it can be kind of tough.
I
So,
think people find a different way to do that, and it just made me laugh because I said maybe that's what I was doing when I would hit the corner store first and I would drink 2 beers. It's like, so
yeah,
that's what a lot of people do to decompress. They're like, let me get me a drink. And then they're
yeah,
like, now I
yeah.
can breathe, you
It's
know?
ritualized. It's
Yeah.
ritualized. You wouldn't you would believe because you guys are smart and up there with this stuff, but
Yeah.
do you know how many rituals we go through every single day that we're not even aware of, man?
The one
Like,
that gets you to work and the one that gets you
yeah,
back home. Because
yeah,
before you go to work, you're like, ah,
yeah,
you know, I gotta put this persona on and get out
yeah,
here and go to work, right?
yeah, yeah. There's a whole process of getting to work. There's a metaphysical change that we go through sometimes to get to work.
It's
And
almost like you're inserting an exoskeleton or a new spine just to make it. But I
yeah,
was gonna say too, a lot of women or a lot of people's complaint is when their mate comes home, they can feel that energy coming through the door. And it's like they're coming in with
yeah,
all this uck and guck from all these other people that they've been dealing with. And it's, it feels, it takes up all the space in the home and it sucks up the energy in the home, and that's a big part of why people are struggle with relationships, because we have to really be aware. And as empaths, then we have to be aware on the other side. You're empathic, but you're also, your energy is nosy and it's all digging up into other people's space, so you need to zip your energy back up and be like, because I have to give a person space to be going through what they're going through without me being offended by their energy. You know what I mean? Like, so both sides have to be responsible. Like, I can't be instantly offended by everyone's energy around me. Like, oh, you're
Yeah,
triggering me. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. No,
your being triggered is actually your responsibility. And I think that's something I've been wanting to say for a long time. If you're triggered, that's actually your responsibility.
that's man. I know it goes against a lot of thinking that we are responsible for what we say and do. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Um, I think sometimes every everything everything is a straight line with opposite ends of a spectrum. Okay, so you can have somebody who is so far on this side and so far on that side that they don't understand the people that are right here in the middle that can kind of draw from both. So when you have, for instance, uh, an empath who meets somebody who's narcissistic, right? Like that's two total opposite ends of the spectrum right there. But it's the same thought process, but it's just that far out of whack. Um, I think really when I look at people coming home from work and the energy that we bring with us, um, the first thing that I'd like to say is apologize. You know, it's so important to when you realize that you have affected somebody. So if I walk into the room with this heavy, aggressive nature and this energy, and the person who's in that room doesn't really deserve to feel that, they're just an innocent bystander. They shouldn't necessarily be forced to feel my energy. It is up to me to rein that in. That is part of my job, is to rein that in. I'm not responsible if this person can sense, oh, Patrick's kind of in a pretty intense place right now. I'm not responsible for how they deal with it. I'm responsible for how I radiate it, though, right? I don't have to go at it like that. I can still go at it like this with the same amount of intensity, right? As a matter of fact, do you know how unnerving it is when you call somebody into your office and you have to discipline them? Sorry. You got
Because
to
he's the
discipline.
bad guy at work.
Yeah,
He has to be the bad guy.
yeah.
He's the executioner.
And man, and sometimes when you do that discipline, you have to come from such a higher place because you don't want it to be of judgment. It's about observation. If I observe somebody do something wrong, I have to correct that. It's not about me being judgmental. It's about me saying, no, this is what's right. You can't do that. You have to do this.
Or about you flexing your authority
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
somebody feel like absolute crap because today this is going to be fun. Let me watch Johnson squirm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I've held a director level position where I've got like so many people underneath of me. And one of the most important things that I brought to the table was the fact that I actively, consciously thought to not do that, to not be over the top, to not um, be aggressive. I scaled back actually a lot of the way that I spoke to people, and that was that was a big deal to me because what I was simply doing was what the golden rule of every major religion says. You treat other people the way you want to be treated. That is not rocket science. But yet we have countless books, we have countless college classes even about, you know, how we act socially. And what I'm just amazed is that people don't just teach people to be authentic. There's no class in school for authenticity. There's no class at school that teaches you how to control emotion. There's no class in school that teaches you how to breathe, because sometimes that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes just taking a cleansing breath is time immortal. The best thing you can do for yourself is I've taught people in flying airplanes. Okay, so one of the most important things about flying a jet doing 600 miles an hour is don't go fast. Like, don't react to something fast. If an emergency happens, don't react. You have to. I teach people, breathe, give a pause, because if you react to something, you might hit the wrong switch. You might do the wrong thing. And we need to do that in our lives when we're confronted with something. Instead of reacting to it, pause. Just a moment. Take a breath. Then you engage.
I think that's our collective message, because you really laid it out there for us. Um, I was gonna say you have your page on Facebook, which is Empowered Energies, and
Yep.
then you also have Empowered Energies on YouTube, as well as Obsidian Echoes on YouTube for music.
Yes.
So this
The
is how we find you. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen for anybody who wants to find Patrick and listen to his music. Do you make soundscapes for other people to create their own meditations?
So yeah, matter of fact, I've been contracted a couple times from instructors, or I had one who basically just does guided meditations and hypnosis, and she just wanted to have some kind of nice ambient background music, and so yeah, I've contracted with people and made things for others. I like putting stuff out on YouTube. Mostly because it's I write the music for me. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part. I write it for me. And when I get a couple people that watch it or maybe hit like, it makes me go, okay, I can I can write another one maybe like that, and see if I can get a little bit more. So it's for me a journey. It's not about, I'm not putting out like the perfect song. That's not the intent. The intent is to move people. And when I write these songs, it's also known as liminal, a liminal soundscape. So it's about the body. It's about emotion in the body, right? So it's not. I'm not just writing this. I'm not just writing this song for a meditation piece. I'm writing this song that's a meditation piece about the heart chakra. And since it's a meditation piece, of course, I have to tune all my stuff to 432 because you got to be in the right frequency. And then I'll start composing. But it's funny how people have contacted me out of the blue sometimes and have said, "Hey, would you write something for me?" I literally just had it at the Renaissance Festival out in Tampa, the Bay Area Renaissance Festival. I saw a friend who I haven't seen in a long time, and we were talking, and it was, we need to get together. And it's kind of like, man, it's so cool because I don't even think about it. Like I just write. Things come to me and I just write. So the Obsidian Echoes YouTube page is all different kinds of genres. All right, so I'll have like the typical ambient song that's just the nice meditation sound, maybe with some water in the background or rain. And then other ones I found, which is really good for shadow work, is this ambient genre known as dark drone, which is basically you take a single note and you play a single note as kind of like the bed, kind of like what I do when I do my sound healings. You use that drone as a bed to then create this sound layer over top of it. So this drone is constantly going, and then all the notes are in that key. So if I'm using E flat, all the notes that I'll play will be in E flat that kind of fill in the space in the background. There's also some really kind of cool tribal beat stuff that I have on there. One is for specifically written for journeying. I wrote one song last week actually, after I had just finished a psilocybin journey that day, where it was just this amazing musical experience, which that's not what I had my mindset for. I had my mindset for something totally different, and this whole music thing came out. I have this little pan drum that's black, but it's got this kind of like etching to it. And when I was outside just playing on it, it was swirling green, like all these cool, interesting colors, and this music was just flowing. And the interesting part, and I'm maybe working the courage up, but I actually filmed it because
Oh, nice.
I knew something was going to possibly happen. So I had my phone set up outside. So I had been in my room all day. So while I was in the room
Wow.
going through this journey, I was all of a sudden called outside to the drum.
We're
And
gonna have to get you to come back next time to play your music
yeah,
because we didn't get to that part. I didn't know you were. You're like a very you're very intent with your words, and you're very wow. Like you don't have to ask Patrick but one question. And it's like, oh, okay. Talk about an open book. You better get ready because he's gonna read you the story. But that's amazing and beautiful, and we really enjoyed having you, Terry. I didn't know if you had any words because I know you got to scoot out shortly.
Yes, I've got to get going here, but I just wanted to say thank you, Patrick. It was your perspectives were very interesting, and you are indeed a very deep person, and so that well goes very deep, and so your words are very profound, and thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's and I know that your path will open up, and it's like, you are the healer, but then we all are. We just open up to the divine source and it flows through us. We don't have to do anything. We just open. And that's just it. It's just discovering how we open, and
Right.
and
yeah,
not take it and say I have to do this. You just open and it just comes, right?
yeah.
Right.
Let it,
All these ways, all these different ways that we can heal and allow others to heal, but just it's beautiful. And I guess that's why you're good at the digging deeper course is because you are deep. But I mean, I think that's why we all enjoy this class because I don't think that any one of us could you know, none of us take our journey lightly. Like we're all just so posed at this self-discovery that it can't help but be deep.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody who was watching, I just want to thank you. You can see on the bottom where you can find Patrick. And Patrick, any last words? But I'm going to give you like 10 seconds.
Ten, 10 seconds. I'm going to take it all. Everybody
Okay.
step outside your door. That's all I need you to do. Step outside your door, connect with yourself, ground yourself, and send out heart energy to the collective. That's all I ask.
That's
Mhm.
it. Wow. All right, you all have a good day.
You
Go
too.
do what Papa Bear told you, and let's get it done.
Absolutely. Take care.